Hi, Jeff Marshall, President and founder of Morgan Works, a company that helps to develop and design uh, capabilities to create revolutionary learning organizations. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about crisis and how organizations respond to crisis. Every generation likes to think the crisis they're going through is probably the worst that's been experienced. Probably not true. If we think back to the winter of 1778 and the crisis that the Continental Army faced, it was a terrible crisis. 11,000 soldiers went into camp at Valley Forge. About 2,000 of them died of disease and starvation. It truly tested the mettle of the leaders. And as we'll spend a minute of time looking at it, I think our leadership came through in flying colors. Crisis really helps you identify who the right leaders are. CV-19 is a crisis. There's no doubt about it. We've got quarantines going on. Businesses are shut down. Unemployment's up. Federal deficits are skyrocketing. The disease is going to go away. We're going to solve that. But the after effects of the business shutdowns, the unemployment, and the deficits are going to continue to create a crisis environment for a long time to come. We're clearly in a crisis and we're not getting out of it in the near term. The question is, what are you doing during the crisis to strengthen your organizations, make sure they survive and thrive? In a crisis, marginal organizations are going to fail. These organizations could be service organizations, they could be private or publicly held businesses, they can even be some governmental organizations. But if you're just marginal going into the crisis, you're going to fail and probably not survive. Good organizations will find a way to survive, but they're going to come out of the crisis severely damaged and will have to really struggle to find a place post-crisis. Excellent organizations will find a way to maintain what they're doing and come out of the crisis relatively intact. But superior organizations will find opportunities either internally or externally and shape, act, and grow. They will thrive within the crisis because leadership will find a way through it. In the middle of that crisis, you can do roughly one of three things. You can freeze. You're so afraid of the chaos that's out there that you're unable to make decisions or even continue to act. Or you could do what I call the ostrich school of management. Put your head in the sand, hope everything goes away and just tries to go about business as usual. Or you can act. Acting, particularly in the midst of chaos, takes courage. Leadership needs to go out and find or create opportunities, either internal or external. Envision what those opportunities will be able to do for the organization, assess that opportunity, conduct some scenario-based planning to determine the optimal scenarios in order to execute, decide which scenario to use, and then act decisively and boldly. Again, that takes leadership. So if we go back to Valley Forge and we think about Washington. Washington was in a crisis, no doubt about it. The Army was in danger of falling apart. The Continental Capital in Philadelphia was occupied by the British, and the winter weather conditions were horrific. You can see here Washington checking his soldiers, sharing their hardships with them in the midst of a blizzard. Washington did not just sit down and say, man, I hope we can get through this winter. No, he looked for opportunities and he found some within Valley Forge. He brought Baron von Steuben over and used him to help reforge the Army. That's why the name Valley Forge is kind of interesting, because the Army was completely reforged during its winter quarters. So when we look at a problem or an issue, we have to understand what the causes are. And not just those we can see, but what the root causes are. What are other areas that can be affecting that problem or issue? We have to clearly define success criteria, determine what the key issues in that success criteria are, and filter down to the doable, find the solution, ensure that the solution that we're looking at We understand what the impact upon other areas are and then be able to implement. So broadly speaking, here's our process to do all of that. On the left, you see the problem-solving issue that we just went through. We have to identify that problem. Then we have to gather data, test events, surveys, interviews, or information from the external environment. Bring that into a consolidated data set, and then conduct some analysis. Here we're using RStudio. It's a good data science tool. Provides some easy-to-use tools with some verifiable results. Generate analytical reports that help us to understand all of that data and what the key issues and everything that are going on. Confirm our issue and problem, be able to restate it clearly. Filter through all of that to what is doable. Go back to our success criteria. Make sure we understand and make sure it's still valid after we've done the analysis. Then relook at our courses of action and test them. And we test them in two ways, through screening and evaluation criteria. Screening criteria looks and says, is this scenario doable? Will it solve the problem? Is it feasible? Do we have the resources to execute it? The evaluation criteria then takes those feasible solutions and then evaluates them to help determine an optimal solution. Once we've designed and selected that optimal scenario, we turn it into a plan and we design it and we execute it. That's exactly what Washington did at Valley Forge. He found somebody in von Steuben that could reforge the Army and take, frankly, battered Army that was in tatters and turn it into a professional organization. What's interesting about von Steuben is he was kind of unknown on the continent for the most part and kind of in disrepute in Prussia. But Washington saw what was good in him and knew von Steuben was the right person for the job. He brought von Steuben together with a special company where the American were able to listen to von Steuben, learn and understand, and then that company helped propagate out these new tactics, techniques, and procedures. And the American Army came out of Valley Forge far stronger, far more confident, and was able to engage in set-piece battle against the British. So let's take a look at how we do this holistically. Many of our organizations today are a little bit more complicated than the American Army was at Valley Forge. So we've got to look at what our portfolio is. You see up here it says business portfolio management. The operational lines of business, it really doesn't matter. But what is it that we do within the organization? We usually have multiple things happening at every given time. I like to use the Boston Consulting Group matrix, where we are able to assess and say, this organization is throwing off cash or resources that we can use. This organization is not going anywhere, and we've got to look at how do we transform it or get out of it. What's the rising stars? And then what's the life cycle of that organization? Is it brand new? Is it just starting out? Is it at maturity? Where is it? And that's where we take in the strategic planning aspect of it, and we build an effective strategic plan. Now, in order to do that, we have to really do a lot of detailed evidence-based assessment. And that's what you see are several evidence-based tools and an overall process to manage that strategic planning. Organizational development and leader selection are absolutely critical. You've got to be able to match the leader to the organization so that you have the right leader doing the right things. A bold, audacious leader in a declining market space that you're just trying to eke out cash is probably not going to be good for the leader or the organization. The leader's going to get frustrated, and the organization is not going to thrive. So you need to understand who your leaders are, what the organization looks like, and engage in organizational design and leader tailoring. And then once we've done that, we've got to provide the cognitive tools to allow the teams to effectively execute. You're looking at a top-level menu from Saratoga, which is one of MorganWorks products. In a follow-on video, we'll talk a little bit more about how to use Saratoga in order to execute organizational change and crisis response. For now, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. I do have a book out on Amazon, Thrive in the Age of Knowledge. It's available in either soft copy or Kindle. I'd recommend the Kindle edition because there's a lot of hot links and it's a lot easier to follow. But I want to emphasize it's a practitioner's guide to building revolutionary learning organizations. So again, thank you very much. And in the spirit of Valley Forge, what are you doing? Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, but today. What are you doing to make sure that your organization not only survives this current crisis, but comes out ready to continue to thrive? Thanks a lot and have a wonderful day.